Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, Monroe. It is wonderful to see you all again today. And I'm looking forward to our time together as a group. This is our last scheduled meeting of this committee. And as we get to the end, we're going to be formally letting you know how you can continue to be involved in this work. There is a lot of work to do going forward, as is evident to everybody right now. And as it's all dawning on us, we've hit the end of July, and I don't know about you, but this was a July that went by faster relatively in my recollection than I can ever remember. And you certainly have a lot to do between now and the start of school. So we'll be talking about that as we go forward, but I wanted to welcome you back to our last meeting of this group. First, I wanted just to invite anyone to comment on anything that you wanted to say about the minutes from last week. If there were any comments about that, Pam got those out early in the week. Great, okay. So we have a limited goal for the meeting. So we want to gather further input from the committee on the development of a plan for starting the school year. And in relation to that, we have some changing information. It's been a week of new data and new information coming in from a bunch of different sources. And so we'll be talking about that in a few minutes too. But before we got to that, I just wanted to go through and remind everybody of our primary considerations list. And I have now found a different place to put that on my computer. So just to remind everyone that way back early in our process, you took a considerable amount of time to come up with a set of 6 conditions or guiding principles that we called the primary considerations, and what we were going to use to evaluate any plans for starting school come September. And you were very wise, I felt, in your deliberation around this, and you came up with 6 guiding ideas. First, safety, physical and social, emotional, for all involved, staff, students, the community at large. Equity, you wanted a plan that was going to give priority to students who needed the most attention and resource. You wanted a plan that was going to provide for the best possible learning experience while meeting the other attributes of the considerations. You wanted a plan that was flexible so that students, family, and staff and their individual circumstances and needs could be met. You brought attention to the idea of sustainability so that logistics, consistency, and the district's ability to deliver on the plan without breaking the budget or, frankly, without breaking people could be accomplished. And you wanted a plan that acknowledged community partnership with consistent care and communication. So those were the guiding lights, basically, of our work together over the course of the 6 weeks that we've been meeting. And now, in light of some new information that has been coming out this week from the Department of Health, it's important for us to go back and look at those guiding principles and say, this is what we said were going to be the flags that we were going to plant and build a plan around. And given whatever conditions happen, those are going to be the things that we are our foundation. So with that, I'm going to invite Dr. Blasco to share a little bit about some information, new information, and also about the board meeting, which takes place tonight.
Yeah, I would just, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. I've really gotten used to our Thursday afternoon meetings. So Spencer has called attention. We will be finishing 12 hours together today. And that is pretty remarkable. For me, this has been definitely something that I've been really introspective about and really thinking about, what this feels like to our students and our teachers, our staff members who have been connecting with our students through digital means through the spring. And, I guess the point of that is that I have really felt like I've been able to create some relationships with people that I haven't interacted with previously. And as I said, those interactions have been specifically online only, which is pretty incredible and gives me some hope, especially in light of the things that have shifted. One thing that it's just really important to acknowledge is we had some pretty big tells from the health department early on. Last week, you'll recall that I tried to give you a little bit of my crystal ball and talk about the King County school districts. And there was a lot of information that was kind of triangulating around there, some advocacy from our labor groups around really, really focusing on safety and really understanding this situation. In that time frame, we did deploy we took a look at that data last week, and so we know that a significant majority of our community has voiced that they were very comfortable, or comfortable, I guess, I don't want to put a very in front of that, they were comfortable having their students participate in the hybrid model, so 2 days a week minimum. And so we have that information, and we're going to continue to talk about that today, about how important that is. I'm going to just back up a little bit, and I'm going to take you down into the weeds with us. One of the requirements that we have as a school system, and all 295 school systems have in the state of Washington, is we need to turn a plan into OSPI. That plan needs to be approved by the Department of Health. So our local Department of Health has to give the pass to the plans that we will present to the school board. And just as we've said through this whole thing, this committee will be making a recommendation to the school board, and the school board will be acting on that. That's a really important statement that I just made right there, and I really want to emphasize that. When it became very clear where this was headed, the school board wanted to act very quickly. They are very intent on allowing us to understand the direction that we're going for both our families in the community to be able to make their plans, and our instructional staff for them to really begin to think and really plan and prepare for this next shift, right? And so we had a board meeting. We had a discussion in a board meeting, and they were intent on us having an emergency board meeting yesterday. And I want you each to know that we did not have an emergency board meeting yesterday because of this committee scheduled for today. And it was important for me to be able to talk with all of you, each of you, in this context, prior to there being any edicts from the school district on the direction we're going. I wanted to be able to have this conversation, and we, as you look at the agenda, we truly hope this is a conversation today. And my assessment of that is we don't really have a problem with that. You know, there's a lot of great sharing that has gone on, and we are much better off at this point in this process than we were 6 meetings ago, 10 hours and 15 minutes ago, if you will. We are much better off now than where we were prior to starting this committee together. We have some very solid ideas about what hybrid looks like. And, all of us, and I believe this to be core truth, all of us want our kids back in schools. All of us want that to happen. And when you look at our primary considerations and our guiding principles, primary considerations, the biggest factor on there is safety. I have spent hours with the health district over the last 2 weeks, and it's very clear. Dr. Spitters is our chief medical person for Snohomish County. There's some numbers that he explained to us, and I am not a doctor. I'm going to do the best I can. I am a teacher, so let me do the best I can with trying to project this to you in a way that's hopefully meaningful. What has happened in the county is over the last 6 weeks, the number of confirmed COVID cases has increased weekly over the past 6 weeks, and is now at the point of at or near 100 cases per 100,000. So out of 100,000 population, there's 100 COVID positive people, right? The medical science behind that, once you get to 75 people out of 100,000 people that have a communicable disease, then at that point, what the medical professionals consider is that is sustained community transmission. So that was new vernacular to me. So I'm really glad I was able to get that out. Sustained community transmission. And essentially what that means is for everyone that's getting COVID, they're spreading COVID. That's what those numbers and that's what this trend indicates. And so when we were down to 20, and by the way, that's when we started this committee, we were on the right side of that curve. The curve was flat, everything looked good. I was so excited to have kids back. I was very excited to talk about this hybrid model. But what's happened now is that, you know, granted, I think we're all adults who can look at this. 65% of the new cases in Snohomish County are between the ages of 15 and 32 years old. And so I have a 21-year-old and an 18-year-old at home. And I will just be really honest with you all. I do not have control of my COVID circle because I live with my children. And they are making choices that are not aligned with the science. And some of you are saying you're a bad parent. I'll just take that. I'm also in this balancing act of mental health, well-being, and all of those things of just having my daughter just graduate from high school and the social things that were taken away from her at that moment in her life and her opportunities to be with her friends. But I have a front row seat to that 15 to 32-year-old age group. And it's not that they don't believe in COVID. That's not what it is. Is their drive to be together is stronger than their belief in COVID. And unfortunately for us as a county, we're seeing that manifesting in our numbers. So what was made clear to us by the health department this week, last week and into this week, was they are certain that were we to open schools, we would have cases of COVID in our schools. And those cases of COVID in our schools would be spread to our community. And they said that in no uncertain terms. Last week, they were unwilling to put that on paper. The pushback from educators and, well, really educators on that call, and a number of my staff members who are on this call know that I know you're all shocked by this. I might have been one of those educators who spoke up and just talked about the logic of opening a high school with 800 kids, because if we went to a hybrid model, our comprehensive high school would be about between 700 and 800 kids and more than 100 adults to bring that into a space. And, you know, I asked Dr. Spitters that question specifically. So as we're considering hybrid models, and in the case of my comprehensive high school, Monroe High School, what that looks like, doctor, is this. And his comment back to me was, yeah, I wouldn't be comfortable bringing that many humans into one space. So that was kind of last week. And then into this week, you see, hopefully you've had an opportunity to take a look at your email. What we chose to do was to send you the press release and the Everett Herald. Many of you probably saw that already. I also wanted you to have a copy of the specific letter to us as superintendents in school systems so that you could see the direct nature of that communication. Many of you are professionals. Many of you understand risk management. I'm looking at Rasmussen right now. You know, I mean, many of you understand that there is, there's a concept out there around risk management of care. And when you have a directive like that from the health department, if you choose to go against that directive, then that directive could be held against you, so to speak, if there were to be harm caused, or if someone could prove that their relationship to your actions caused them harm, that could be put back. So there's some risk management elements in here. I told you I was going to get in the weeds. But I was very nervous about this meeting. And Spencer can validate that emotion. I shared that with him. Kim was in our planning meeting, because what I was fearful of, or what I am fearful of, is that I don't want to minimize the great work that this committee has done for us in moving us forward as a school system, in being able to understand emotions from teachers, emotions from bus drivers, emotions from parents, emotions from parents, emotions from administrators, feelings, all of these things. We have lists and lists and lists of things that have prepared us to act and respond in a way that's going to allow us to prepare this plan that will eventually be approved by the school board, endorsed by the school board, and then sent on to the state of Washington, sent off to the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. The timing of that, we're probably going to start that work with the board August 10th. And then because our school day, you have to turn that in no later than 2 weeks prior to the first day of school. Because our first day of school at this point in the calendar is September 9th. That allows us to have that August 24th board meeting as well, to be able to have any final recommendations on that. You're hearing it first here. You know, you've heard other school districts announce, and you see the direction that they're going. The school board tonight has, through deliberations with me, my executive staff, will take into account the recommendation from the Snohomish County Health Department, and will be directing us to prepare that plan with online learning starting at the beginning of the school year. And so, you know, we wanted that to get out there. Spencer wisely gave me 20 minutes. I've taken 10. I'm leaving 10 for any questions that any of you might have, specific to where we're at right now, what's going to happen tonight, or any of those other things. And I'll just pause for any comment. Please just speak out.
Got
Justin.
Oh,
Sorry, go
ahead,
go
Jason.
ahead.
Jason.
Oh, thanks. I was just going to say, is there a recommendation from the Department of Health as to, you said that, you know, 100 per 100K is where we're at now. We started at 20. Is there a recommended number that the Department of Health said, okay, this is okay, once we hit this goal, this number, this is an okay number for us to target, starting either with a hybrid or a back in school model?
Yeah. So great question, Jason. I apologize for, I felt like I was getting way into the weeds, but he did talk about that. That 25 per 100,000 is when they begin to feel like, especially when that's trending down. So there's two factors to that: a downward trend of the data. And again, for the last 6 weeks, and those are rolling weeks, for the past 6 weeks, Snohomish has been trending up. So when the trend begins to go down, they start to feel like, okay, it's not, everyone is not spreading COVID at that time, right? So there's not a one-to-one relationship between a COVID positive and them spreading that to someone. And so the magic number, I guess you will, the number that, I should say it this way, the number that Dr. Spitters identified for him to feel confident in recommending and what they believe to be their ability to get Snohomish County to phase 3 is below 25 cases per 100,000 is what the number is. That being said, great question. At 50 per 100,000, we would begin to see them, you know, one of the things that we're really working on, and you'll see in our communication, and he was clear, the governor's clear, you know, we begin to have access to other districts and their negotiation processes and things, is, you know, small groups of kids that either are supported through IEPs, English language learners, other students, McKinney-Vento, homeless students, other students that are having challenges with the online experience to begin with. Less than 5 is the guidance from Snohomish County. So full PPE, protective equipment. You know, a lot of people are deploying plexiglass shields. We have a number of those in the district. Actually, we have a teacher on the screen who can talk to some of those protocols and practices that are happening for a group of special education students now. But you know, you could see the health department start to say that could be groups of 10, right? And so we're really hopeful of that because, I mean, the thing that we can't deny is our teachers are better in front of our students than any other way. I think we have the opportunity now, knowing as early as we do that we have the month of August. And I truly believe that our teachers are going to put their shoulder into this monumental task that we have ahead of us. And we know it's going to be different than the spring. And I believe that they're going to really put a lot of great effort into that. And we're going to support that and make sure that, you know, we have a real solid plan in front of us to engage students in that moving forward. But yeah, the answer to your question, Jason, is 50 on a downward trend. You'll start to see some decisions being communicated out of the health department. Once they get below that 25, they'll start to apply back to the state for different phases. If indeed Governor Inslee's phases are still in play, and we believe they will be.
Okay, thanks.
So just to clarify what you just mentioned, the McKinney-Vento kids, the IEP kids, even the mainstream kids that just need help during this time, we might look at that at 50 cases, or we might look at that sooner.
So here's step one. We are currently involved in negotiations with one of our labor associations. And so, you know, those are all things that are changes to the working environment. And so in the state of Washington, we're compelled to bargain changes to the work environment. And so we'll need to negotiate that. Tina, one of the things that we've seen in other places is agreements around when, and some of those agreements read that willing staff and PPE, you know, depending on the phases and everything. But we believe that there are some students. I know David is advocating strongly for some of our most impacted students who are supported through special education plans, of how we can have consistency in their learning models with the proper. So what hasn't changed is the guidance around face shield, face masks, face shields for students, washing hands, social distancing. All of those pieces are still in play. What has changed is then this directive. So we're hopeful that we will have the opportunity to identify students that need to have that more intensive one-on-one or one-on-4 situations where we feel confident in the PPE. We're monitoring the health of the students before, after, during. You know, we're doing those attestations that are in place. But there's just some things that we learned from the spring that didn't work well in the model, in the distance model. Another thing to think about is OSPI is not releasing the Washington Kids Assessment, WA-Kids Assessment, which is the kindergarten assessment. And so there's some work that we have to do around that. And you know, how much of that can be done virtual? How much of that are we going to do? I think there's a lot of talk amongst us administrators, and I know I've heard this from teachers, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Sherry about this yet, but there's a lot of shift of how do you build community first. And now that this is all shifting. And one of the things that we have heard from the State Board of Education is that parent connection meetings and student connection meetings at the beginning of the school year can be counted as conference days. They're kind of underneath conference days, which count for our 180 days. So if you saw the communication from OSPI Superintendent of Public Instruction, we are responsible for 180 days of education and an average district-wide of 1,027 hours of instruction. Within that, working with families to be comfortable in Canvas, working with students to gain relationships with their teachers, building that into the beginning of the year. We have that model for kindergarten right now because of Walk Kids, and I think we're going to learn from that as once again, we've started here with this committee at the 30,000, and now over the next few weeks, we've really got to get down in the weeds and look at what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? What does that schedule look like? And as Tamara and I have been working on communication out to the community, you know, one of the things that I mentioned in that is consistency of communication and how this is going to be evolving over the next few weeks. Sherry and I we're gonna do our best to get a message out to teaching staff next week. So we will be properly socially distanced somewhere in the district. Hopefully her classroom is what I'm pulling for. But we're gonna put together a video for our teachers next week. And so there's just going to be a lot of communication out there about the unknowns right now. And as you know, being on this committee, staying at this 30,000 foot level, there are a lot of unknowns that are going to have to be specified very shortly. Good
Blake,
question.
you have a question?
Yeah. So I know we're going to be giving our formal recommendation to the board by the 24th of August with any updates, nitpicks, changes, and the like. And I know that tonight's board meeting is technically public. But do you know, Justin, when or if the board is planning on for a timeline of going more public than the board meeting itself with the fact that the plan is remote learning to start the school year?
So if, and we'll be cagey about this, if the board so directs us this evening, we have worked with all of our labor unions and we will notify employees tonight. And then we will notify broader scale to our community tomorrow. Good question.
I have one. What do we know now currently with what's been going on with ESY as far as how has that gone? Are we talking about one-on-one with kids? Has it been a couple of kids? That kind of approach as we may gradually move into helping students who need that additional more in-person kind of support. Can anyone speak to how summer school has gone with that, whether it be teachers directly involved in it who are in our committee or someone who's there seeing it? And I'm just wondering like how many kids right now we're doing with like one adult.
I could speak a little bit, and then Michael Jones has been one of the teachers supporting the program as well, so get his perspective as well. The last 2 weeks we've been meeting 3 hours a day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday over at Monroe High School. We have 3 classroom spaces set up. We have a total of essentially 8 have been participating this week, spread out across those 3 classrooms. So we have in one classroom, there's 4 students. And with the teaching staff and paraeducator staff, students have been doing a fantastic job wearing their face protections for the most part. And this is some of our students that are most impacted with disabilities. So they've really been tolerating it from the age level of, I think our youngest is about first grade up through the high school level. Our youngest student is really tolerating it really well. In addition to, we have the desks all set up at a minimum of 5 feet apart. So there's that social distancing there. Because some of these students require more direct and one-on-one instruction, we have additional plexiglass for each of the workstations so that there's that extra layer between even with staff with face protections on, they still have an additional layer of plexiglass. One of our students has had difficulty tolerating a face mask, so he has a face shield that we've been working with him to wear more consistently. Because he's not able to do that as consistently as others, we have him in a room with another staff member where they essentially have the entire classroom. And so it's It's not 100% effective, but the precautions have been in there. The bus drivers have been doing the attestations each morning when they pick up students and releasing the students from their family. Because some of these students aren't as verbal as others, we've been doing those attestations with the families to ensure that they don't have a fever, they don't have a cough, they don't have respiratory issues. In addition, we have a nurse has been supporting the program, and she's been taking daily temperatures of all the students. Last week, and we've been trying to stay really tight with this. Last week, we had a couple of students that, once they got the program, were doing some coughing and sneezing. We were about 95% positive that that was just allergies, but because we're erring on the side of caution, I called those families, and families were, willingly came and picked up those kids, and then checked with those families before they came back on Tuesday to ensure that they were symptom-free. So that's kind of some of the structures that we put in place to help it. Michael, if you're comfortable sharing just some of your perspectives, I've been over there daily, but Michael's been doing the work on a daily basis.
You pretty much said it all. I mean, 1-to-1 ratio, as much safety as possible, still not 100%, but as close to that as we can make it. So you can just confirm everything you said.
Michael, I wonder if you'd be comfortable just speaking as far as the comfort level of staff that you've observed, and any kind of, I mean, we were all pretty nervous that first Monday we came and kind of had a planning meeting, but just kind of as the kids, and number one, I've got to say, nothing has made me happier than seeing kids back in classrooms doing learning, because these were the students that really were not able to access remote learning. So they came back after a break of about 4 months and really impressed with their engagement level and how on task that they stayed. But I was really trying to make sure that the staff was feeling comfortable as well. So Michael, that was a piece that I'm just really kind of interested to hear, kind of anything that people don't always tell me everything, but sometimes, kind of the behind the scenes conversations that, just because that is a real critical piece of this as well as we build out into September.
I would say we're not completely comfortable, but I think that's because the second we do, we'll feel like we might let something slip. So it's like we feel like we have to always be on our guard. We feel like in order to do our jobs, we kind of have to feel uncomfortable, because otherwise it might not be as safe. But yeah.
And just one thing I would add is when we posted these positions, we really weren't sure whether we would have anybody apply for those positions. We weren't sure if people would be even comfortable, putting out there. And this is our first foray into having students back in the buildings. And we were able to get all of our teaching positions filled, our paraeducator positions. People were stepping up, and as well as the nurse. So really fortunate with the level of staff support and staff support. Just their commitment to the students. They wanted to be there for the students, and Michael has taught these kids for the last several summers in ESY, as well as some of the kids are from his program. So just kind of that staff commitment to their students has been really has made me feel good to be a part of the district.
Okay, well, thank you very much all. And Justin, anything else you'd like to just say in closing on that before we move to the next segment?
No, I just, the things that I'm thinking back to what Todd Johnson said last week after reviewing the data. We're really in a tough spot. And if you've, I don't I choose to stay as far away as I can from social media specific to the roles that we have. That wouldn't be necessarily a healthy thing for a superintendent to dive into. But one of the things that Todd mentioned last week is you talked about, I think we were talking about the hybrid model and Monday, Tuesday, or Monday, Thursday, and I think it came out to like 39 and 39. I think it was like right within tenths of percentage points. And I feel like that's what we're about to wade into. As many of you know, I mean, I've lived in this community since '99. I have a lot of relationships with people in this valley, and people want their kids back in school. And there's a national sentiment about that. And then again, I would just really encourage you to think about 6 weeks ago, right? When we were here, numbers were trending down, and yet the first thing that we put as one of our guiding primary considerations is safety. And that changed on us. I can tell you the conversations that I'm with superintendents is there's almost a depression, as you continue through these circumstances, because David said it, right? Like the joy that he has of being able to go to a building and see kids in a classroom, and yet, we need to be responsible. Safety is our #1 priority in school districts. That has been said. The last 25 years of my career, it was one of the first things that was said to me as a beginning brand new teacher. And, many of you have heard me say that to you and to community members. And as I shared, I think a couple of weeks ago, if we have a doubt that we can keep our kids safe and therefore our community safe and our staff safe, then we're going to make a decision that is likely going to go against the grain. And my inkling is I feel like there's going to be a number of individuals that are going to be very vocally disappointed about this situation and circumstance. And I guess the reason that I say that to this committee is, don't personalize that for anything that you've been a part of or anything. You have really, again, done great work and supported us extremely well. We know we're going to plan and support this online model, and we're going to have this hybrid model designed and ready to implement when we can implement this. And there's going to be some decisions that are communicated out. We're looking at ways to impact our community and parents and working families as little as we can, as far as timelines, working with our partners. Jeff and I, Rasmus and I, we've got to branch off and talk about the Boys and Girls Club. I got to talk to the YMCA. I just had a conversation this week with the Baptist Church and the Baptist minister about what they're thinking about doing as a congregation to provide some opportunities for childcare during this situation. And he saw the writing on the wall. And so, those are things that are also going to be in our plan. Is we've got to get the economy started. We got to stay safe. We have a lot of things to figure out. But again, the point being is, obviously I believe the district's going to take some heat on that, and none of that should be reflected in the work that we've done together as a team. This has been a very, very inspirational, very conducive process for us to think about things that, quite frankly, if I would have put my heads in a room, there are things that you have come up with and have shared with us that we would not have been worried about or thinking about or planning for without this process in place. Thanks, Spencer.
Great. Thank you, Justin. Okay, and to that point, I'm going to invite Kim to share some thoughts a little bit about how the committee's feedback has helped the development of the district's plan on the hybrid model and how that can be applied in the current circumstance. And so I'll just let her take it from here.
So what I want to do is just talk to you about what we've been preparing in the learning and teaching side of things for either the hybrid model or continuous learning 2.0. And I want to preface all of this with acknowledging that a lot of this work has already been done by some individual teachers, or maybe by a grade band of teachers in a school, or maybe even in some schools. So what we've tried to do is just build out as a system some of the tools that we have and increase the capacity of understanding best practices around distance learning as a system. So first of all, thank you to the committee for feedback, which is going into our Continuous Learning 2.0 plan that we're going to submit. But also thank you to all of the great teachers and leaders in our district who have really been trying on some different things and seeing what's working best for our kids. And it has really gone into informing kind of this plan that we're putting together now. In education, at least with a lot of the groups that we've been talking with in Monroe, there are 4 questions. They're kind of 4 essential questions for education. And I like to use those as we're framing out the work that we're doing. The first is, what is it that we want kids to know and be able to do? The second is, how do we know if they've learned it? The third is, what do we do when they didn't get it? And the fourth question is, what do we do when they already know it? So the first question, what do we want students to know and be able to do? And this is a huge, big ball of string and everything else. This includes all of the academic pieces for reading, writing, math, science, PE, art, visual and performing arts, and all of those things, as well as the social emotional learning that we want kids to have when they leave us. So one of the first things that we really started doing, and I'm going to say again, this work is happening in different places to different degrees, but identifying essential learnings. What are those things that are so important? What are those things that will determine whether a kid is successful in the next year of school or in the next class in a sequence, that we have to make sure 100% they're learning at high levels. So each of our school buildings and then across schools for elementary and middle, teachers are working to identify those essential learnings. Lots of stuff that we teach, lots of standards that we teach to, but not all standards are created equal. So we're identifying those areas where we really need to focus. Feedback that we got from this group, but also from our survey that we did, was it was really hard for some students and families where there were different learning management systems like Canvas or Google Classroom. So with the help of our teachers, we landed on Canvas as the learning management system that we're all going to be using this coming year. And we have built out a very robust professional development, online professional development system so that teachers and paraprofessionals and school leaders can go in, take these classes and become more skillful at using Canvas. We also have some things that we're doing in terms of iReady K-8 for reading and math that provides some real substantial gap filling strategies for kids as they're learning. We also have some elementary teachers, 2 elementary teachers, Kelly Pins and Robin Carlson, who are going through and building out science lessons to put on Canvas for kids and families to access remotely. Because we know we have to look at synchronous, which is kind of in person, we're all together, maybe a Zoom meeting with a small group or a class, and asynchronous, which is the stuff that will be done on your own time when it fits best for you and your family. So Kelly and Robin have been working on building out some elementary science lessons for that. We're also pursuing what would it take to get some art lessons online and get some music lessons online and maybe some physical activity kinds of things online. And in the learning and teaching department, Deanne Hermes is also thinking a little bit about, can we have a Monroe School District channel of sorts where you might have a schedule for the next week that shows like at 8 o'clock there's going to be a yoga class, and you can Zoom in and do that yoga class with the teacher, or you can do the recorded version later. So we're looking at all kinds of other tools that we can use in Canvas. And so we are looking at Nearpod, Book Creator, YouTube. I know the elementary school is also looking at Eureka tools for online math learning. So all of these things that we're looking at and talking about, we're learning the best practices on using that for distance learning, but we also know what we're learning around these things are things that you can do in a hybrid model. You can also use these in class. So we're trying not to say, oh, this is only for Continuous 2.0. or, oh no, this is only for the hybrid model. We want to make sure that the skills that we're learning and the tools that we're buying and providing professional development on are things that we can use no matter what situation that we're in. How do we know if they've learned it? So there's a couple of things here. Teachers evaluate kids 180 days a year. Whenever they teach something, one of the things they want to know is, did they learn it? That could be just asking a question. It could be observing what kids are writing or how they're doing a math problem, but they're constantly evaluating and giving that feedback loop. We also have some universal screeners that are required K-12 for our plan, and again, it's just best practice. K-8, we have iReady, and that is a tool that can go in and identify areas where kids might be struggling and have some holes in their gaps in their learning, but it also helps us to identify kids who might experience lower than expected academic outcomes or at risk for behavioral categories. So that's another universal screener that we're looking into. The third question is, what do we do if they didn't learn it? So we've taught something and the kiddos didn't learn it. So this is where that synchronous asynchronous might come in, where teachers will be working one-on-one with kids or pull small groups together. It might be that at some point when we can get safely, we can have students who are receiving ELL services or special education services, or kids who are substantially performing below grade level, some kids who are receiving LAP services, where we can get them in some smaller groups to provide that extra support that they need. That's what we do when they don't get it. We're also researching some more tier 2 interventions for online, and that's definitely a work in progress as we partner with our school leaders. The fourth question is, what do we do when they've already learned it? And that's definitely the enrichment piece. So part of this is making sure that our lessons are engaging and they're very rigorous, but it's also providing extended opportunities. And this is probably going to be, part of it's going to be with the Canvas lessons, but part of it's going to be this enrichment that we want to put together with, maybe some coding and some other classes in terms of history and math and science that we can have available for everybody. The last piece that I just want to talk about is we're really thinking about what does communication look like. And so we've got two communication paths that we're working on. One is, how are we communicating out to our Monroe School District staff about the things that we have, and maybe some timely reminders about, it's the end of the quarter, what is grading going to look like, and all of that. The other piece is we want to put together a space where families can come in and learn, how do I support my student getting on Canvas? How do I support my student with iReady when they're at home, or support them with this assessment, or just some things about my child's really upset about not being able to start school. What are some things that I can do to have conversations with them and help them, manage these really, really strong emotions? So we're still thinking a lot about the communication piece. I'm going to turn this over to Keith now, because I wanted Keith to be able to give us an update on technology. And we've talked a lot about that. We know that hybrid or distance learning, the state of our technology and deployment is going to make or break us. And I know that they've been working really hard. And so I want to give him an opportunity to share what he can share at this point, knowing that we still have a lot of work that we're going to continue to do.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, good afternoon, all. It's good to be with you again. Yeah, we do have some challenges on the technology front. It's not always easy to get connectivity to everyone. And so, we thought a lot about that during the spring and during our initial rollouts, just to kind of go over a couple of things with you. In the spring, we had rolled out approximately 3,100 Chromebooks of our about 6,000 Chromebooks that we have in the district to families. And that was pretty well received. One of my concerns, I guess, right now is I want to make sure every student who wants and needs a Chromebook has access to one. And so that's one of the things that we're going to have to start thinking about is possibly doing another small deployment here in August to ensure our kiddos have devices because, it's great. Some families have a lot of technology in their homes and they're thinking, oh, well, I have enough, until again, everybody's working from home and going to school at home. And so that can be very challenging, as I know all of you are aware. One of the other things that we did, and I spoke to it initially, was connectivity. Here in the Monroe School District, we live in an area that has a lot of great connectivity to the internet. And then we have some places that, quite frankly, don't. That we have some very challenging areas within our district boundaries that there is no broadband service, there is no Frontier, now Ziply, there is no Comcast. The only option out there, not even cell phones work there, and the only option is a satellite. And satellite service, quite frankly, is pretty expensive and not always an option. So that is one of those things that, you know, I know there was in the email that was sent out regarding different committee work that might happen, you know, following this, there were different committees that people could volunteer for. And if you're interested, I'd love to hear your thoughts and have you join our technology committee to help us brainstorm and problem solve ideas for improving connectivity for all of our kids. We found that we did procure, the district did through COVID dollars, as well as some devices from Snow Isle Libraries. We procured around 125 hotspots, both some were T-Mobile and some were Verizon. And typically one of those two carriers should be able to provide service in your area, but there are spots where neither one of those works, and that was very challenging. And so we would welcome some ideas on that front. And out of the 125 we got, right now we have about 50 that are still deployed because as you are all aware, I think we did not collect devices unless they were no longer needed. So a lot of our kiddos still have Chromebooks, and those who needed hotspots still have them. So our hope and belief is that they will continue to try and use those over the summer to further their learning the best they can. One of the things, you know, we talk about Zoom, and we're all here in the Zoom together today and enjoying that experience. And that's not always an enjoyable experience for some of our kids or some of our staff, to be quite frank. I know that Dr. Blasco has voiced numerous times about his displeasure about having to be in Zoom and not being able to be together. And I know that we all miss that. But we have, as a district, and I want to give a big shout out to both Niall and Deanne and to one of my guys, Jesse, who spent a lot of time hardening from a security perspective and providing great materials on how to use Zoom and how to use it properly. They've done I believe, just a magnificent job in making that available because despite what you may hear about the different video conferencing options that are out there, yeah, there are other options and they're adding features all the time, but as far as initial feature set, Zoom actually had more than anybody else at the time, and we had fantastic licensing through the state of Washington. So that has been our platform that will tie, you know, hand in hand with Canvas. So, and then I guess one of the other things I want to speak to real quick is I'm meeting with Kim and Victor and some others, Deanne and Niall and a few others are going to be meeting on Monday. We are looking at a tool that will allow our kids who are enrolled in CTE programs to possibly be able to access that CTE software that, quite frankly, they didn't really have access to in the spring. We found a solution. We've done some initial work on it. We're trying to vet it and make sure that that it'll work and work for everybody. And so that is something that I'm actually pretty excited about. We've actually found out about this from some other surrounding districts here in the Northwest that are using the product. And I was told by Jesse the other day that I think it's LA Unified just went out with a huge rollout of this product. And so I'm super excited about that. I don't believe it gives us an option for everybody to be able to use it because, you know, when he first told me about it, I thought, well, this will be fantastic. This means that anybody, any teacher, any student could remote in and use it for Zoom and everything else. But due to latency, it's not going to work for that. But it will allow, we believe it's going to allow students to actually be able to remote into a machine within our district and actually run Adobe software, you know, actually be able to do things in Photoshop, be able to use SolidWorks and AutoCAD software and things like that in our CT programs. And so we're super excited about it. Like I said, we're trying to vet it because we just got to make sure that it's going to work and just work every time. The advantage behind this utility is that kids can use it from a Chromebook, which, I mean, that's just, you know, a total home run if that's the case. So super excited about that. But, you know, those are kinds of the things we've kind of looked at from a technology perspective. We're still working to figure out how to best serve all of our staff because that is a big challenge as well. And so I do believe my support staff will be ready to go. You know, when school starts, they are very well versed now in how to provide that remote support, and not just that remote support to our teachers, but to our families. And so I know they're going to be ready and up for the challenge on that. So I don't know, Kim, is there anything else you needed me to touch on from that front?
I'm trying to remember. I think I'm going to ask if Niall or Deanne have anything to add, because I know that one of Niall's projects that he was working on with you was flash drives for kids if we just can't get any service, but I'm not sure what else is on there.
Yeah, Niall, you wanna speak to, Niall did a little bit of testing using flash drives with Chromebooks. You want to speak to that, Niall?
Yeah, I'll speak a little bit on that. So one of the challenges is geography, right? So when we have students who may live in an area where cell providers aren't there and satellite service is spotty, is how do we get materials that may be digital to them when they don't have internet access? And both Deanne and I have been doing some testing. Canvas has a publishing aspect to it that we can get materials offline that she's been working around. And the other aspect of it is downloading something to a flash drive or a thumb drive and then transferring that, you know, to students somehow so that they can get either Canvas assignments or videos or other digital content that to a Chromebook. And then through the Chromebook, they could use those in an offline mode. So we're still working through it. It's not a ready to go, we're going to go for this 100% right now. There's still some challenges to work through, but that's one model that we've been discussing and talking about.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Kim, Dr. Blasco, have I missed anything else that you think would be pertinent? Okay. I think that's what I got, Spencer.
Great. Thank you, Keith. Thank you. So we've heard some of the thinking and some of the work that has been done in terms of preparing for opening. And also from the work that we've done over the last 6 weeks together as well in terms of informing some ideas that we were originally applying towards the hybrid model. But given what you've heard and what you've also taken from the conversations that we've had over the course of the summer, do you have any thoughts that you want to make certain we get documented about how this is we're going to pull this off? What are the things that we need to be thinking about to make certain that we pull off an effective and successful start of school under the conditions that we're in right now? So just an open conversation about that, and I'll try to, you know, see people as they raise their hands, or just feel free to jump in.
One of the questions that I'm getting over and over from teachers is, how do you engage students one-on-one? Like, how do you engage students at the beginning of the year and make connections like we normally do via Zoom? Like, we don't have that training on how to do that. And many teachers are already buying books on what to do. And so, like, it would be great if we had some professional development on starting out the school year.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's a whole new environment for that. And also probably some board policies to
Yeah.
to address.
I would suggest maybe so there's a couple of things that are happening here in the next week or so. So we have representatives from our schools that are going to participate in Jeff UTEC through our ESDs. So I apologize. There's been some acronym soup here, and every time I hear it, I'm like, I have to remind myself, we're educators. So CTE is Career and Technical Education. So if you rewind to Keith's commentary about CTE software, CTE is Career and Technical Education. So that's like our foods program at the high school. That is we have a Core Plus program at the high school, which the intent of that program is to feed high school students right into advanced manufacturing, including Boeing. That's one of the programs that we have. You can imagine that teaching kids how to rivet on Zoom, very challenging. So we were really challenged in the spring. So CTE, Career and Technical Education. ESD is our educational service districts, and there are 9 of them in the state of Washington who support regional school districts. Our ESD is 189. It's located in Anacortes. They have been partnering with a futurist and an educator named Jeff UTEC. He has a website called Reimagine Washington Teaching, I believe is what it is. Jeff, actually, Kim and I participated in a leadership perspective from him through WASA. That's when we became familiar with him. So we have a few teacher leaders that are going to be participating in that. In addition, our elementary principals this week participated in a more nationally recognized group of folks. John Hattie and Fisher and Fry have developed a handbook, and there's strong advocacy from our elementary principals around. It's a K-12 handbook, and it's specific to the online environment. And I know Jeff has talked to me specifically about it. Anna's talked to me about it. Bonnie's talked to me about it. I hope I'm not leaving any of my elementary. So 3 of 5 for sure. Probably Kristen's talked to me about it. I haven't had a chance to see Stephanie this week, but I'm sure if I talk to her, she'd talk to me about it. So we are looking at that to provide that support to our teachers. Jeff, I don't have that book. I know you do, or Bonnie, or Anna.
Is it the one with the airplane on the front?
Yes. And actually, the secondary is going to go on Tuesday. Secondary is going to, I believe, Brett and Jonathan and Terry are taking teams on Tuesday.
So there's some things I think that, as in every education thing, obviously we're going to have to make it localized to Monroe, but to Sherry's point, there are materials out there that we're going to need to leverage to provide quality training to our staff to prepare them for what we've heard from this committee. You know, we're going to be better than we were in the spring, and one of the things that has been a challenge, and we're hearing this voice from our president of our MEA through her members, is they want support in understanding how to better create community in an online environment. And I think that's great. And that kind of goes, Sherry, with what I was mentioning earlier about, do we need to create connection days at the beginning of the school year to facilitate that? So that's something that we're just gonna have to talk about. Pamela.
Sorry, I forgot to mute. So kind of going along with what Sherry said, would like to also input, including the support staff, not as in the para-educators, but as in the SLPs, PTs, the nurses. A lot of what we do, I mean, this is brand to us as well, and I know that it was very difficult for the nurses to reach out and continue our conversations with families a lot of the time because they were so overwhelmed with the educational piece of it. Just to also find a way to include that that aspect of education. So, you know, if it would involve like health lessons or like you were about to say with the communication days, something like that, where we can also be part of that community to continue offering our support.
I think that's also part of one of the lessons we learned from March through June. To your point, Pamela, a lot of our families were inundated because the communication coming from team members was well-meaning, but it was almost a fire hose. And so really coordinating that conversation, so it's really coming from a multidisciplinary team as much as possible versus the nurse calls, and then the SLP calls, and then the teacher calls, and then the PT calls, and then the principal calls and checks in on how everybody's doing at home, and then we survey them. And so really coordinating that communication so that it's not overwhelming, because it's a stressful time for the families at home with their kids. And really, I think that's when as we build this out in our subcommittees also is having the parent perspective as well as how much is enough and what is too much, because it's also, we did get to a tipping point. I think we were all so wanting to go overboard to make sure that we were reaching everybody, that we reached them over and over again, and then finally had some parents say, please stop.
Other comments or questions?
I think this is, I don't know how to do that. I think this is the book.
Yep, that's it.
Yep,
Okay.
distance learning playbook. Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
Jeff? Yeah, thanks, Sherry. Jeff?
Yeah, thank you. And throughout the course of our meetings and just reading some of the comments back from the survey, I mean, I know that and recognize that there's a concern amongst our families and even our educators as far in the lines of childcare. And I just want to put it out there again and remind everyone that, we got some great organizations here within our community. Of course, I represent the Boys and Girls Club, and we've been serving the kids full day since this all started. And my team and I throughout the county have been working to, just like everyone else, putting plans together in place to continue serving the kids, regardless of which direction schools happen. So, just wanted to put it out there again that rest assured that I know there's concerns out there, and rightfully so, in regards to that, but there are plans in place and amazing organizations that are really stand ready to continue serving those kids. So if I can answer any questions directly and rely along those lines, I'd be more than happy to. But and also thank you to the great work of this committee. I've served on enough of the various committees throughout my career that to get a committee of 50 to come together and be consistent and on the same page is extremely rare. So kudos to all of us and the work that everyone's done here. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Other comments or questions or ideas? Jeff?
I would just say that for what Jeff Rasmussen just said, a key component is daycare for staff as well as for our community members, and not only working with those agencies to provide that childcare support for our families and staff, but while they're there, how we can work with them to provide that, if it's online, how we can provide a communication and partnership with each other so that kids have access to learning and that their learning is continuous while they're in a daycare, while their parents are at work, and those parents could be working as teachers or staff members and or as parents and community members. So not just the childcare part of that, but the access to students learning while their parents are away.
To piggytail on that as well, Miracles and Memories Academy is our business. I'm a parent of the district, but that's also our business, and we support kids with disabilities. I've tried to work really hard with David and he with I to get families that have disabled children supported. And we are still willing and able to be part of that network. So if you are going to collaborate with the Y and the Boys and Girls Club and us and the church, maybe together we can make a unified plan to provide, like Jeff is saying, not just childcare, but also those pieces of learning that the parents can't do because they're at work all day and then they're at home all night with their kids.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you.
That has been rattling around in my head, Tina, for ever since I met with Pastor Sorgen on, I think it was Tuesday. I had lunch with Dale and just talked to him about, the concerns that he has. I think one of the things that we haven't really addressed, but I think it is important for us to give a little bit of time to Joe Nigel. One of the things that I think each of you can, if we're really honest with ourselves, right? Like I am not the same person I was months ago pre-COVID, right? And there are days that I just want to go back to where it was. And, that's just not the reality of this situation that we're in. And that is manifesting for our children. One of the statistics that's been shared with us as superintendents is that, and this is a stark one, is that the CPS reports since March have declined over 50% in the state of Washington. And that's not because child abuse has declined 50% in the state of Washington. That's because we don't have access to our children as mandatory reporters to be able to provide that report to the law enforcement agents that can do that. And so there are stark indicators. As I said, that's one that wakes me up at night, and I apologize for sharing that, but it is an important information piece to know that this is the information that is coming at us. And so sorry, Joe, to put you on the spot, but Joe, over the last few years, has built in Monroe an empire of safety net. That's the wrong terminology because it has other terminology in our world of education. Has built a social emotional structure that has been designed to respond to the needs of our students and families very specifically. One of our members was recognized regionally as our ESD Employee of the Year. And so that's one of the team members that works with Joe. And so, part of our planning moving forward, especially now that it's very apparent that, as I said, I had to be a little cagey, highly likely that I'm predicting what the board will decide to do tonight. And by the way, Tamara, our communications person, is telling me, please, if you already haven't done it, please allow that communication process to take place that we have planned. We are trusting you as valued team members here in this committee. Again, our communication plan is, those people that tune into the school board meeting are going to know tonight. So we anticipate there's going to be some share from the school board meeting. But again, it's going to go to our staff after the school board meeting and then our community tomorrow. But Joe, if you could talk a little bit about some of the lessons we learned in the spring. You heard Sherry talk about, I think a concern that is out there as well, and one that I've heard as superintendent as well is, we have our insurance company tell us that one-on-one interactions with kids are not allowed. And so I think that's a problem of practice that we're going to have to continue to work through, especially for SLPs, OTs, nurses, specialists, even teachers, right? Even paraeducators who are making sure the kids are okay. So Joe, if you could just talk a little bit about, some of the thinking that your team has been engaged in as we now, high likelihood of continuing to move into a format that we don't have physical access to our kids on a regular basis.
Sure. Gosh, I'm always more comfortable when I have slides to share with everybody so that we can reach both visual and audible learners. But I can tell you that the focus of the team over the spring was to identify a way to deliver really seamless services. And there are going to be gaps heading into a new virtual environment. The types of service that we provide, actually, hold on one second. Is there a way I can share my screen, Spencer? Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir. Joseph. Hey, Joe.
Yes.
You are all set to go, sir. Go for it.
Let me see if I can show you something here. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go quick. So this is a reference presentation I put together for the school board, but we essentially provide services, social emotional learning services across 3 tiers. We, in green, have evidence-based programs that are in place to serve most kids, and most kids, 85%, are going to be well served from a social emotional learning perspective. They're developing relationship skills, self-regulation skills, they're developing problem-solving skills, they're learning social skills and other skills that enhance how students learn and enhance safety. For those who aren't well served by the one-size-fits-most approach, we have small group supports for certain students who have common risk characteristics, and those could be academic risk characteristics. They're English as second language learners, or social characteristics. They may be in a foster care program, or they may have identified being victims of abuse or some other strategy. And those students are served in small groups with programs in yellow. And then for students who aren't served well by that tier 2 or programs that are designed to reach about 10% of kids, we have put, largely through grant funding, specialists in place in order to meet the individual needs of students. And so this is the team that has worked together last year to kind of bridge that gap. So while tech is working on hotspots and teachers are working on virtual delivery of education, this is the team that's coming around doing front porch visits, delivering homework if that's what's necessary, providing mental health evaluation or substance abuse treatment evaluation, connecting to outside service providers, providing case management. One of the things that we know about our most impacted families or our most at-risk families, is that they're often aware of resources that are out there, but they don't know how to effectively use those. And so our team helps those families navigate the community resources and school district resources that can bring stability and help them to be successful. We've offered a variety of training, youth mental health first aid training as recently as June, often trauma-informed practice and classroom management training, and we do this in a variety of domains. So we're offering evidence-based programming opportunities, even in COVID, for families and community, for all students, for vulnerable student populations, and then students in crisis. It really is a pretty continuous system of outreach. One of the things that COVID gave us was an opportunity to meet online regularly as a team and to spread team supports across all schools, elementary through high school. And so we developed, along with our counselors in the comprehensive school counseling program, a lot of intentional and deliberate outreach strategies and case review strategies, just so that we wouldn't have any kids falling through the gap. You know what? I'm talking so much. Justin, bring me back on track. What exactly did you want me to say? I'm sorry.
I just wanted to think about or share with the committee some of the pivots that this team has really thought about in I know based on our conversations, Joe, that there are some populations of students that your team is very concerned about, that our team is very concerned about, not just the behavioral health team, but principals, teachers, paras.
Absolutely.
That's feeding into your team. And then maybe some of the planning around, based on our experience from the spring, we had experience with that. We know that it in some cases it worked, in some cases it didn't work, or we wanted it to work better. And so maybe some of the things that your team has been really thinking and planning moving forward into the fall, and some of the things that you're thinking about, you know, as you listen, and I know all of us in this room are thinking about how this decision impacts us individually, and
Yeah,
in your case, how it impacts your behavioral health team.
I think one of the biggest points that we want to touch on is early professional development around recognizing signs of emotional distress and how we respond to that. I think David really touched on the fact that in our zest to make sure nobody fell through the cracks, we created an overwhelming number of touch points, and we want to streamline how we identify families of need without being overly aggressive in conducting that outreach. I think as we move forward in the next 4 weeks and when my team starts to return back to work, we'll actually have plans that we can put in place. It will include lots of coordination with building leaders to make sure that if you're doing a technology or food or other kind of survey of families, that we include a couple of basic behavioral health questions in that as well. And then we'll just continue to utilize the tools that we developed last spring, which actually worked out very successfully. Our student of concern spreadsheets and case management process, so that we can get those students met. One of the challenges we had initially was, how do we communicate with building principals who have concerns, and there were massive concerns, without needing to take up their time, and how we communicate that these kiddos aren't falling through the cracks. And those communication spreadsheets became the tool by which we could do that. One of the bigger challenges for us this year will be in considering how we handle attendance, and how my BECA specialist supports buildings and families to engage, whether it's in-person, virtual, hybrid, or full-time. So there are still some bumps in the road. For us, again, the number one strategy is maintaining that one-on-one contact, or in our case, two-on-one contact when appropriate. But the big, sorry, I'm going in circles. I haven't had a conversation all day. The big push will just be for coordinating with buildings to make sure that we have a seamless identification process. But I have to tell you, I was really proud of how the team responded. We had such a small margin of falling through the cracks that those who fell through the cracks didn't actually fall. They jumped into them. They didn't want to be contacted by the school district. They avoided supports. Man, we exhausted every possibility and strategy, and we're going to keep doing that.
Great, thank you. Other thoughts, other ideas?
And sir, I might be jumping the gun here a little bit, given what's next on the agenda. I'm seeing the subcommittees list. Justin and Cam, based on some of the comments from Tina and Jeff Rasmussen, and even you, Justin, about partnering with different representatives of the community. I wonder if we should be creating a subcommittee for community partnership. That's the only thing that I wanted to add at this point.
I appreciate that, Jonathan. I was thinking the same thing, but wanted to defer to the superintendent on that idea.
Thank you.
I would appreciate help with that. Yes. Thank you for the deference. I've talked to our communication team about having a site about like a collection of the information. So from Tina's comments of her organization, Jeff's organization, of course, you know, others in the community, and just being able to have not only the initiation of the collection of the information, but and this is based on the conversation that I had with Pastor Surgeon on Tuesday, was what does that support look like ongoing? And Jeff alluded to this as well, is how do we partner? You know, it's to Jonathan's point, it's a community partnership. So how are we supporting the childcare facilities in delivering the online instruction? Because that's a lot of what's going to be happening during those days that the children are being cared for. How do we partner with them with our meals program to make that an easier process for us to partner around the nutrition side of that. And then again, the family connection point and just having that dialogue, that back and forth between our partners and us on, hey, I'll pick on Presley because I can see him close to, he's right here for me. I always do that in Zoom. Jeff and his family is having some concerns about X, Y, or Z, and it'd be great if somebody could reach out to them and talk to them about that. I think the more connected that net is, the concerns that have been voiced in this committee, and rightly so, the more that we're collaborating in a collective fashion on that, the more likely we're going to be able to react and respond and engage families in those concerns, because there's more than just the district, the school district communicating, more than just a classroom teacher, more than just a principal, more than just central office, that there's a community. And I shared, my wife laughed at me last week. She's like, you told my grandpa's story during the committee? I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's a great Monroe story, right? Like, go all the way over to Eastern Washington and somehow convince your bride to get on the back of a horse and ride all the way back to Monroe. I mean, that's good stuff. That definitely, to me, is an epitome of the grit that exists here. And I've seen that in our staff. I've seen that in our community. And, the more that we band together in this process, because that's truly what this is going to be. What gets turned on September 9th is going to continue to get better and better and better as we do it, because that's who we are as a system. We continuously improve. And we have, again, the ingredients to do that. So I would love support, because these are the things that I would like to communicate, not just from my chair or my voice, but from the partners, and just continue to collect those partners, because that's going to help us to inform our work moving forward as well.
Great. Would anyone like to contribute anything else at this point? I know we've had quite an extensive conversation, but would anyone like to share another thought?
Well, I would just like to say one more thing, and it is that I am thankful to the Monroe School Board and the Monroe School District administrative team for looking at safety as the most important concern for our students and for our staff. I just think we're in critical times, and that has to be the most important thing on all of our minds right now. And I am just so grateful to them. And for every person that they hear from that's a naysayer about what they're choosing to do, I want to tell them, for every single person, there are 1,000 more that are thanking you for being a caring school district.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you.
Spencer, I'll add one quick thing.
Yes, thank you.
I think, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about the last couple of weeks, just, being able to take some time and do some planning and whatnot, is just keep, and I actually put this at the top of my admin team agenda for the high school, is just we got to keep it simple for our teachers. I mean, this is overwhelming for me as a principal. It's overwhelming for them, and just, I'd rather see us really zero in on a couple things that we can do well and provide the PD, as Sherry mentioned, than try to do 17 things during this time. Just really being mindful of less is more, and if we want to survive COVID and have those things be long-term, have long-term impact, then we need to be really thoughtful about what we're putting in front of them. And I think right now there's ideas flying all over the place, and that'll start to shut people down pretty quick. So I just think that's a guiding principle that I'm going to think through, is keep it simple. Remember our teachers. This is a challenge. This is hard. This is different. And I'd rather do 2 things well than 6 things not very well.
Brett, thank you. I really appreciate that, because that was when Deanna and Niall and I were talking about what kinds of tools could we make sure teachers have access to and provide training for. we researched to find out what they were already using that would really enhance and support the distance learning as well as the hybrid as well as in. So I definitely appreciate that. Less is more.
Yeah, great idea. Really important thought. There's always the temptation, particularly in difficult times, that we've got to try and do everything now, immediately. And most organizations find you can't do that very well. And so the quality suffers and everybody's disappointed. So it's an important point to bring forward. Well, I appreciate the conversation, and I'm sure that the district leadership appreciates the ideas that you've shared. We're wrapping up our time together, and I just wanted to say that while this committee is basically coming to the close of its charge, there's an opportunity for you to continue to participate and give input and feedback as we move forward closer to the start of school. And on the agenda sheet, you'll see that there's a list of committees, and I think this idea that Jonathan suggested is really important too, that we should add one that would be something along the line of Community Partners Committee, something like that. But David, yeah, do you have something to say?
No, just in addition to that, one of the things I was talking with Michael Jones this morning, then talked with Dr. Blasco a little bit later, is we probably need another committee around kids that were having difficulty with accessing remote learning. So either a special education subgroup or more generally, because it's not just our kids with special needs that are having trouble accessing, but other students are having trouble accessing remote learning as well, such as some of our ELL families as well as families in poverty, but really to break down and kind of figure out what students do we need to consider as those few students that may need to come in for in-person services. So that I really need some help in making a thoughtful plan.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. So we've got the ones listed on the agenda sheet, and then if you can keep in your head, or if you're particularly interested in one of these other two, write it down in your notes here so that you can know how to volunteer into that. But elementary, middle school, high school, Sky Valley, Leaders in Learning, Technology, Transportation, Nutrition, and Safety were the committees that we had identified, and then adding to that community connections or community partners. If you just say community, Pam will get it, or this difficulty accessing, trying to problem solve around the difficulty to access. If you're interested in participating in one of those groups going forward, please send an email to Pam Swanberg, and you should all have that because she sent our early invitations to us for the meeting. If not, we can have her send something out to all of you to make sure you have that. But just communicate back with her that you'd like to participate, and then whoever ends up facilitating or chairing that particular work group will get in touch with you and get so you can start getting together and doing some work together towards addressing those questions and those ideas. So that would really be helpful to the district at this point, and to the successful implementation for your community of a plan that's going to work for students and families in the district. So I would encourage you to do so. And with that, I'd just like to turn it over to Dr. Blasco as we look at closing, and then I would just like to say before I do that, I shouldn't have thrown the ball before I was ready to really let go of it. It's been a real privilege to get to work with you folks over the course of the last month and a little bit. You're very thoughtful. this is a big group, and your capacity to listen to each other and to keep the focus on what is closest to all of our hearts in really difficult emotional times because of the crisis that we're in is a real tribute to you. You know, there's no question about it. You have some really hard work ahead in order to launch the school year in a way that is going to be successful for students. And yet, I think all of the things that you've demonstrated over the course of the summer, and I think how you represent your community is an indication that you're going to be very successful at it. So it's been a privilege to be with you. I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I admire you a great deal, and I'm going to be looking on and seeing your successes. As I said in an earlier meeting, I just live a couple communities to the south of you, and so I have great interest in what you're doing, and good wishes to you. And with that, I'll just turn it over to Justin.
So we, Kim and I have a standing engagement with Spencer that we've set. We're not sure when that happens. Kind of depends on everything, right? And I would just suggest that I look forward to seeing each of you. In our planning session for today, Spencer shared with us that he was able to go to a county that is in a different phase and actually is in the 10 phase. And so he was actually able to provide professional development to a group of 10. So him and 9 other professionals met. And the phrase that he used was, it was so good to be back 3-dimensional. And boy, Spencer, that really stuck with me. And I know many of you have been in the Zoom scheduling, and you know, many of us are heading back into that Zoom scheduling as August comes around the corner. But I would just concur with Spencer and just share that I really look forward to seeing each of you personally when it's safe. Maybe that'll be at Fred Meyer, and please say hello to me. I will be wearing my my district provided face mask though, so I'll give you that look just in case. You know, I've got a lot of wrinkles from worrying about all these kids. So, but please say hello to me if we do get that opportunity. And if those of you that choose to, I think many of the committees, I'll be bouncing in and out of those committees to make sure that things are, there's no barriers to the things that come up, and to work with that. So I'm very excited. This is the start of what I foresee as the community practice of Monroe moving forward, is having opportunities to have constituents represented from all of our angles. And so, you know, meeting with Dale this week, Dale and I go back a long way. Our kids graduated high school together. So Pastor Sorgen, you know, one of the things he mentioned, he's like, "What, did you have any faith community on your committee?" And you know, he always does that to me. It's one of those things where you just kind of look, you know, some of you, if that's your experience, probably have had pastors like that before. Dale's not my pastor, but when I'm interacting with him, sometimes he sure feels like my pastor. Reminds me of my blind spots. So this is something that I would hope that you've had a positive experience, because this is what we need to grow as a community, is to be able to interact with this specificity. There, as I said, we went way down in the weeds today around the information that was provided to superintendents throughout Snohomish County this week in our meeting with Dr. Spitters, and the things that those districts are dealing with. And as you read the news articles and things, you have a inside track into a lot of the reasoning around and the wrangling. I will share with you that the dozens of superintendents that I met with, all of us want our kids back in school. And that we've said it goes without saying, but I think it's important to say. I think it's important to say that there's a lot of places that the educators on this screen could go to teach online prior to COVID. And none of us have chosen to do that, because those relationships with kids is really what is the driving force of being an educator and wanting to make a difference in the lives of kids. And I have heard that communicated from you as well. And that has been very meaningful for me to hear that from others of you that we don't get an opportunity to interact with enough. And so that's what I really, in thinking about this closing, that's really what I wanted to share with you. I'm involved in my transition plan into the superintendency right now. Kind of an interesting transition for this, getting thrust in April. One of the things I asked President Langston on April 1st, when that conversation took place, I came back in the room and I said, so Jim, let me just ask you this question. Is this the best April Fool's joke ever? Or is this actually true? Is this actually happening? Am I actually, is this really landing on my shoulders? But I hope that you've seen that the collaboration between all of us over the last few weeks, this is what will make things great for kids in Monroe. And this is what we will continue to build off. I really believe this is a starting point for my time as leader in Monroe. One of my mentors is Dr. Prenovo, Bill. And so, and he's kind of a competitive guy, Dr. Prenovo. He's kind of a competitive guy. It's that Montana thing, I think. But, he likes to throw the gauntlet down to me as one of my mentors and, how are you making the campsite better? And I think that we've taken a big step in that direction with this committee over the last few weeks. So again, thank you for your commitment to this time. Thank you for your dedication to this committee. Thank you for your support of the Monroe School District. And I appreciate each of you and your participation. And I'm going to kind of miss these Thursday afternoons. So I'm going to enjoy the subcommittees and the work that's going to continue. And I agree with Spencer. This is a great foundation to build the house on, right? We have really done a lot of very, very intentionally smart thinking around what are the things that we need to be working on, planning on, and moving forward for our kids. And I'm confident that the staff members that we have in Monroe are going to pull that off with the partnerships that we have in the community. So thank you again. I appreciate you for being here and look forward again to seeing you three-dimensionally, Spencer. I like that concept. I really look forward to seeing you three-dimensionally. And perhaps even, I guess it might just be fist bumps, but perhaps some, some elbow bumps as well. And look forward to that in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. And I would just like to close by thanking some of the folks that made the logistics possible for all of this to happen. So Keith and Jesse in one of the meetings, Pam, Tamara, and Aaron. And so just really doing a wonderful job of making this all possible. So thanks again, everybody.